The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with silence. Representatives from over 100 worlds sat in their seats, but no one wanted to speak first. The war had been going badly for a very long time, and everyone in the room knew it. Ambassador Xylox of the Valorian Collective finally stood up. He was a tall creature with blue skin and 4 eyes that could see in every direction at once. His people were known for their wisdom and their calm nature. But today, even Xylox looked tired and afraid. "We have lost another 12 systems this month," he said. His voice echoed through the silent chamber. "The Vex 3 Dominion continues to advance. Our fleets are being destroyed faster than we can build new ships. Our soldiers are dying by the millions." The Vex 3 were the enemy that the galaxy had feared for centuries. They were a race of warriors who lived only to conquer and consume. They did not want peace. They did not want trade. They wanted everything, and they would not stop until they had it. High Commander Threnvex of the Karathi Empire slammed his massive fist on the table. He was a giant creature, nearly 3 meters tall, with thick armor plates covering his body. His people were the greatest warriors in the Allied forces, but even they had not been able to stop the Vex 3 advance. "We need more soldiers," Threnvex growled. "We need more ships. We need more weapons." "We have given everything we have," said a small representative from the Nexari Federation. "There is nothing left to give." Xylox raised one of his 4 hands. "There is one species we have not yet asked for help." The chamber went quiet again. Everyone knew which species he was talking about. "The humans," someone whispered. "Yes," Xylox confirmed. "The humans of Earth." Threnvex made a sound of disgust. "The humans are children. They have only been traveling through space for 100 of their years. They have no real military. They have no advanced weapons. They would be killed in the first battle." "They are a protected species," added another representative. "The Council decided long ago that they were too young and too fragile to participate in galactic affairs." Xylox nodded slowly. "All of this is true, but we are losing this war. In another year, perhaps 2, the Vex 3 will reach the core worlds. They will reach Earth eventually, whether we protect the humans or not." He looked around the chamber at all the tired, frightened faces. What did we have to lose by asking? The vote was close, but it passed. A diplomatic ship was sent to Earth with a simple message: "The galaxy needs your help." On Earth, the message was received by Admiral Jake Morrison of the United Earth Defense Council. He was a man in his early 50s, with gray hair and a face marked by years of difficult decisions. He read the transmission carefully, then read it again. "They want us to fight in their war," he said to General Lisa Brennan, who was sitting across from him. Lisa was younger than Jake, but her eyes held the same weight of experience. She had spent her entire career preparing Earth's military for threats that most people believed would never come. Now, it seemed, they had finally arrived. "Do they know what they are asking for?" she said quietly. Jake shook his head. "I do not think they do." The Council had expected Earth to send a small group of observers, perhaps some scientists who could study alien technology. What they got instead was something very different. Within 6 months, Earth had assembled a volunteer force of 12,000 soldiers. They called themselves the First Expeditionary Fleet. The men and women who signed up were not scientists or observers. They were warriors, drawn from every military tradition on Earth. When the human ships arrived at the staging grounds on Valorous Prime, the Allied commanders came out to watch. What they saw confused them. The human vessels were not elegant or beautiful like the ships of the elder races. They were blocky, ugly things, covered in weapons that looked primitive by galactic standards. The soldiers who came out of those ships were even stranger. They were small creatures, soft and fragile-looking, wearing heavy armor and carrying weapons that fired solid projectiles instead of energy beams. Commander Threnvex walked up to Admiral Morrison with barely hidden contempt on his face. The human barely came up to his chest. "These are your warriors?" Threnvex asked. "They look like prey animals. And those weapons they carry belong in a museum." Jake Morrison looked up at the massive alien commander. He did not seem intimidated at all. In fact, he smiled. "We brought what works," he said simply. The Allied command did not know what to do with the humans. They were clearly not ready for real combat, so they were assigned to a minor defensive position on a small colony world called Dexar 4. It was a quiet posting, far from the main fighting. The humans would be safe there, and they would not get in the way. Captain Danny Reyes was given command of the human garrison on Dexar 4. He was a young officer, only 32 years old, but he had already served in 3 conflicts on Earth. He knew what war looked like. He knew what it cost. Danny led his company of 300 soldiers through the forests of Dexar 4, setting up defensive positions around a small mining settlement. The local people, a peaceful species called the Dexari, watched them with curious eyes. Sergeant Amy Cortez helped Danny set up the command post. She was a veteran soldier with 15 years of experience, and she had seen the way the Allied commanders looked at them. "They think we are here to die," Amy said. "They sent us to this place because they did not want to watch us get killed." Danny nodded. He had understood the situation from the moment they received their orders. The galaxy thought humans were weak, primitive, helpless creatures who would break at the first sign of real danger. "Let them think what they want," Danny said. "We know what we are." He looked out at the forest, at the alien trees, and the strange sky above. Somewhere out there, the enemy was coming. The Vextri would find this little colony eventually, and when they did, they would expect an easy victory. Danny almost felt sorry for them. The humans of Dexar 4 went about their work quietly and efficiently. They dug trenches and set up defensive barriers. They planted sensors in the forest and marked escape routes through the hills. They studied the terrain and made plans for every possible attack. The Dexari colonists watched all of this with growing confusion. They had never seen a species prepare for war with such calm determination. The humans did not seem afraid. They did not seem worried. They simply worked hour after hour, day after day, getting ready for something that the colonists hoped would never come. But it was coming, and when it arrived, the galaxy would learn a lesson it would never forget. The Vextari scout ships appeared in the sky above Dexar 4 on a quiet morning. The colonists saw them first, dark shapes moving against the clouds like birds of prey. Within minutes, the alarm was sounding throughout the settlement. Captain Danny Reyes watched the enemy ships through his binoculars. There were dozens of them, each one carrying soldiers down to the planet's surface. His tactical display showed the numbers clearly. 4,000 Vextari warriors were landing in the forest, less than 10 kilometers from the colony. Sergeant Amy Cortez came running up to his position. "Command is asking for our status," she said. "They want to know if we need evacuation." Danny lowered his binoculars. "Tell them we are fine." "Danny, there are 4,000 of them. We have 300 soldiers. I know how to count, Amy." He turned to face her. "Tell command that we have the situation under control. Then get everyone into position." Amy stared at him for a moment, then nodded. She had served with Danny long enough to trust his judgment, even when it seemed like madness. The humans moved into the forest like shadows. They had spent 2 weeks learning every path, every hill, every stream in the area around the colony. Now that knowledge would save their lives. The Vextari advanced in a standard formation. They moved in a massive wall of bodies, thousands of warriors marching together through the trees. They were terrifying creatures, tall and covered in natural armor, with claws that could cut through metal and teeth that could crush bone. They had conquered hundreds of worlds using this simple strategy. They would overwhelm the enemy with numbers and ferocity, crushing all resistance under their advance. The first group of Vex-3 walked directly into a trap. The humans had buried explosives along the main path through the forest. When the lead warriors stepped on the hidden sensors, the ground erupted beneath them. 50 Vex-3 died in the first second of the battle. The survivors roared in anger and charged forward, looking for enemies to kill. But there was no one there. The humans had already moved to new positions, deeper in the forest. Danny watched the enemy from behind a fallen tree, 200 meters away from the explosion site. He could see the Vex-3 commanders screening orders, trying to organize their forces. They were confused. They had expected the defenders to stand and fight, not to strike from hiding and disappear. "Second team, you are clear to engage," Danny said into his radio. On the other side of the enemy formation, another group of humans opened fire. Their rifles cracked through the forest, sending bullets into the Vex-3 ranks. A dozen more warriors fell before the others could even turn to face the new threat. But when they did turn, the humans were already gone. This continued for hours. The Vex-3 tried to advance toward the colony, but every path was blocked by traps and ambushes. They tried to spread out and surround the human positions, but the forest was too dense and the humans knew it too well. They tried to call for air support, but the human soldiers had already destroyed their communications equipment in a night raid that no one had noticed. By midday, the Vex-3 had lost over 500 warriors. They had not killed a single human. The enemy commander, a massive creature called Rexstar, finally ordered his forces to stop advancing. He could not understand what was happening. His warriors were the finest soldiers in the Dominion. They had fought against the Karathi, the Valorians, and a dozen other species. None of them had been able to slow the Vex-3 advance for more than a few hours. But these small, soft creatures were different. They did not fight like the other species. They did not stand in neat formations and exchange fire until one side was destroyed. They hid in the shadows, struck without warning, and vanished before anyone could strike back. It was not honorable warfare. It was hunting. Danny Reyes gathered his squad leaders for a quick meeting as the sun began to set. They had been fighting for 8 hours without rest, and he could see the exhaustion in their faces. But he could also see something else: determination, focus, the cold, quiet confidence of soldiers who knew exactly what they were doing. "The enemy has stopped advancing," Danny said. "They are setting up a defensive camp about 5 kilometers from here. They think they can wait us out and attack again in the morning. They outnumber us more than 10 to 1, said Lieutenant Mike Santos. "Even with everything we have done today, they still have more than 3,000 warriors. Yes, they do." Danny smiled slightly. "Which is why we are not going to wait for morning." The night attack was something the Vex-3 never expected. Their species did not fight in darkness. They relied on their numbers and their strength, not on stealth or surprise. When night fell, they assumed the battle was over until sunrise. They were wrong. Danny led a team of 20 soldiers into the heart of the enemy camp. They moved in complete silence, using hand signals to communicate. The Vex-3 guards never saw them coming. In 2 hours, the humans killed more than 300 enemy warriors. They destroyed food supplies, weapons, and vehicles. They set fires that spread through the camp and caused chaos. And when the Vex-3 finally organized a response, the humans had already vanished back into the forest. By dawn, the enemy force had been reduced to less than 2,000 warriors. Many of them were wounded. All of them were terrified. Rexstar looked at the destruction around him and made a decision that no Vex-3 commander had ever made before. He ordered his forces to retreat. The surviving warriors climbed into their ships and fled Dexar 4 as fast as their engines could carry them. They broadcast a warning to every Vex-3 ship in the sector, a message that would soon spread throughout the entire Dominion. "Do not engage the small ones," the message said. "They are not what they appear to be." The Battle of Dexar 4 lasted less than 2 days. 300 human soldiers had defeated 4,000 Vex-3 warriors. The Allied command did not believe the reports at first. They sent observers to confirm what had happened. What those observers found changed everything. The humans were sitting in their camp, cleaning their weapons and eating breakfast as if nothing unusual had happened. The forest around them was filled with the bodies of their enemies. The colony was untouched. Not a single civilian had been harmed. Captain Danny Reyes looked up when the observers arrived. He had not slept in 3 days, but his eyes were clear and calm. "Can I help you?" he asked politely. The lead observer, a Valorian scientist, stared at him with all 4 eyes wide open. "How did you do this?" he whispered. This should have been impossible. Danny considered the question for a moment. Then he shrugged. "We are human," he said simply. "This is what we do." The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had looked at humans and seen weak, primitive creatures who needed protection. They had not understood what they were really looking at. Now they were beginning to learn. The news from Dexar 4 spread across the galaxy like fire. Every species, every world, every military commander heard the story of how 300 humans had destroyed a Vex-3 army of 4,000 warriors. Many did not believe it at first. They assumed the reports were exaggerated or simply wrong. Ambassador Xylox decided to find out the truth for himself. He traveled to the human flagship, a large carrier ship that the humans called the Resolute. It was not an elegant vessel. Like everything the humans built, it was functional and practical, designed for one purpose only. Admiral Jake Morrison met Xylox in his personal quarters. The room was simple and plain, with few decorations. The only items on the walls were photographs of other human soldiers, some alive and some dead. Xylox sat down across from the Admiral. His 4 eyes studied the human carefully. Jake Morrison did not look like a monster. He looked like a tired old man who had seen too much of the universe. "Ambassador," Jake said politely, "what can I do for you?" "I want to understand," Xylox replied. "What happened on Dexar 4 should not have been possible. Your soldiers were outnumbered, outgunned, and fighting on unfamiliar ground. By every calculation, they should have been destroyed in the first hour." Jake nodded slowly. He poured 2 glasses of water and offered one to the ambassador. "Would you like me to explain?" "Please." Jake leaned back in his chair and thought for a moment. "How much do you know about human history, Ambassador?" "Very little," Xylox admitted. "Your species is young. You have only been traveling through space for a century. Before that, you were isolated on your homeworld." "Yes, and do you know what we were doing on that homeworld for the thousands of years before we reached the stars?" Xylox shook his head. "We were fighting," Jake said simply. "We were fighting each other. We were fighting our environment. We were fighting everything that tried to kill us, and there was a lot that tried to kill us." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "Earth is not a gentle world, Ambassador. It is full of predators, diseases, natural disasters, and extreme conditions. When our species first appeared, we were small and weak. We had no claws, no armor, no venom. We were slower than most animals and weaker than many of them. Then how did you survive?" Xylox asked. Jake turned to face him. "We refused to die. Every human alive today carries the genes of ancestors who survived ice ages, plagues, famines, and wars. We learned to work together, to make tools, to plan ahead. But most importantly, we learned to keep going when everything seemed hopeless. Other species have faced difficult conditions," Xylox said. The Karathi evolved on a harsh world as well. The Karathi evolved natural weapons, Jake replied. Their bodies became strong and armored over millions of years. They adapted to their environment by becoming tougher. He paused. Humans adapted differently. We did not become stronger. We became smarter, more creative, more persistent. And when we could not win a fight fairly, we learned to fight unfairly. Xylox felt a chill run through his body. You are describing yourselves as predators. No, Jake said. I am describing ourselves as survivors. There is a difference. He sat back down and looked directly at the ambassador. The Vextari think they understand violence. They use violence as a tool to get what they want. For humans, violence is something older. It is woven into our very nature. We have spent our entire history trying to control it, to build laws and societies that limit our worst impulses. But it is always there, underneath everything we do. And when you stop controlling it, Jake's expression grew very serious. Then we become very, very good at what we do. The Galactic Council reassigned the human forces to frontline combat within a month. They had no choice. The war was still being lost, and the humans were the only force that had achieved any real success against the Vextari. General Lisa Brennan took command of the assault on the Vextari supply depot at Nexus 7. The depot was a massive facility that provided fuel, weapons, and food to the enemy fleets in 3 different sectors. If it could be destroyed, the Vextari advance would slow significantly. The problem was that the depot was defended by 20,000 warriors and the most advanced defensive systems in the Dominion. 3 previous Allied attacks had failed completely. Lisa had 4,000 soldiers under her command. The Allied commanders expected her to fail as well. She spent 2 days studying the enemy fortifications. She watched how they patrolled, how they responded to threats, how they communicated with each other. She looked for weaknesses, patterns, anything that could be exploited. On the 3rd day, she called her officers together. The enemy expects a frontal assault, she said. They have built their entire defense around stopping a direct attack. So we are not going to give them one. Her plan was simple but insane by galactic military standards. While her soldiers conducted small attacks on the surface to keep the enemy distracted, her engineers would tunnel beneath the depot. It would take 40 hours of continuous work, but when they were done, they would be inside the enemy's defenses. The Allied observers thought she was joking. No one had ever tried such a thing against a fortified Vextari position. The risks were enormous, and the chance of success seemed tiny. But Lisa was not joking. Her engineers began digging that same night. For 40 hours, the humans worked without rest. The tunnels were cramped and dangerous, and the soldiers had to dig in complete silence to avoid detection. Meanwhile, the distraction teams above ground kept the enemy focused on the wrong threats. When the tunnels were complete, Lisa led the assault herself. 2,000 soldiers emerged inside the depot's walls, behind the enemy's defensive lines. The Vextari were completely unprepared. The battle lasted 6 hours. The humans moved through the facility like ghosts, destroying everything in their path. They did not fight fair. They did not give the enemy a chance to organize. They struck hard and fast and did not stop until the depot was burning. When the smoke cleared, the Vextari had lost everything. 20,000 warriors were dead or captured. The supply depot was a ruin. Human casualties numbered 212. General Lisa Brennan stood in the middle of the destruction and watched her soldiers secure the area. An Allied commander approached her, his face pale with shock. "How?" he asked. "How is this possible?" Lisa looked at him with tired eyes. "We do not fight the way you do," she said. "We fight to win, whatever it takes." The galaxy was beginning to understand what humans really were. They were not weak. They were not primitive. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors, and they would do whatever was necessary to survive. The war changed after Nexus 7. For the first time in centuries, the Vextari Dominion was on the defensive. Their supply lines were broken. Their warriors were afraid. Their commanders did not know how to fight an enemy that refused to play by the rules. The humans pressed their advantage with a ferocity that disturbed even their allies. Captain Scott Palmer was given command of a special operations unit tasked with striking targets behind enemy lines. His team was small, only 50 soldiers, but they caused damage far beyond their numbers. Their first mission was to assassinate a Vextari Hive commander named Crickster. The creature controlled all enemy operations in 3 star systems. Killing him would create chaos in the Vextari chain of command. The problem was that Crickster was protected by 2,000 elite warriors in a fortified bunker deep inside enemy territory. No allied force had ever penetrated that far into Vextari space. Scott studied the intelligence reports for 3 days. Then he gathered his team and explained the plan. "We go in quiet," he said. "No air support. No backup. Just us and whatever we can carry." One of his soldiers, a young woman named Katie Webb, raised her hand. "Sir, how exactly are we supposed to get through 2,000 enemy soldiers?" Scott smiled. "We do not go through them. We go around them. We move at night, we stay hidden, and we do not engage unless absolutely necessary. The enemy does not know we are coming. That is our greatest weapon." The mission took 18 hours. Scott and his team moved through enemy territory like shadows, avoiding patrols and slipping past defensive positions. They did not sleep. They barely spoke. They communicated through hand signals and moved with perfect coordination. When they finally reached Crickster's bunker, they found it heavily guarded. But Scott had expected that. His team had brought explosives, and they knew exactly where to place them. The explosion killed Crickster and his entire command staff. The chaos that followed allowed Scott's team to escape before the enemy could organize a response. When the extraction ship arrived to pick them up, the pilot found Scott and his surviving soldiers sitting calmly in the ruins of the bunker. They were eating field rations and cleaning their weapons as if nothing unusual had happened. "You could have called for support," the pilot said, staring at the destruction around them. Scott shrugged. Did not want to bother anyone. Stories like this spread throughout the Allied forces. Human soldiers became legends, feared by their enemies and admired by their allies. But there was also growing unease. The way humans fought was effective, but it was also disturbing. They showed no hesitation, no mercy, no doubt. They simply did whatever was necessary to win. The breaking point came at the Battle of Vexta Prime. Vexta Prime was the enemy homeworld, the center of the Dominion and the source of all their power. The Allied fleet had considered attacking it many times, but the defenses were too strong. Hundreds of thousands of warriors protected the planet, along with orbital weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Admiral Jake Morrison proposed a plan that the Galactic Council initially rejected as suicide. He wanted to land human forces directly on the planet's surface, while the Allied fleet provided minimal cover. No orbital bombardment. No overwhelming numbers. Just soldiers on the ground, fighting their way to victory. High Commander Threnvex called the plan insane. "You will all die," he said flatly. "The Vextari will tear your soldiers apart." Jake looked at him calmly. "Maybe," he replied, "but we will take them with us." The council eventually approved the plan because they had no other options. The war had to end, and the humans were the only ones willing to try. The assault began at dawn, local time. 60,000 human soldiers dropped from orbit in landing craft that barely qualified as spaceworthy. The ships were slow and poorly armored, easy targets for the enemy's weapons. Nearly a quarter of them were destroyed before they reached the ground. But the soldiers who survived the landing hit the ground running and did not stop. The battle for Vexter Prime lasted 9 days. 9 days of constant fighting in conditions that would have killed any other species. The temperatures were extreme. The atmosphere was toxic. The enemy was everywhere, fighting with the desperation of creatures defending their home. The humans adapted. They modified their equipment to handle the environment. They fought in shifts, resting when they could and attacking when the enemy least expected it. They never broke, never retreated, never gave up. Lieutenant Commander Nicole Hayes led her battalion through the enemy's central hive complex on the 7th day of the battle. She had lost contact with command 2 days earlier when a Vextheria attack destroyed her communications equipment. Her soldiers were exhausted and running low on ammunition. Many of them were wounded. But Nicole did not slow down. She knew that somewhere in the hive was the Vexthery Queen, the leader of the entire Dominion. If they could capture or kill her, the war would be over. Her soldiers followed her without question. They had been fighting together for months, and they trusted Nicole completely. She had brought them through impossible situations before. They believed she would do it again. The fighting inside the hive was brutal. The corridors were narrow and dark, perfect for ambush. Nicole lost soldiers at every turn, but she kept pushing forward. On the 9th day, they finally reached the Queen's chamber. The Vexthery Queen was a massive creature, 3 times the size of a normal warrior. She was trying to escape when Nicole's soldiers surrounded her. There was nowhere to run. "Surrender," Nicole said, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. The Queen made a sound that the translation device interpreted as laughter. "Your kind does not accept surrender," she said. "I have heard the stories. You do not take prisoners. You do not show mercy." Nicole thought about this for a moment. She looked at her soldiers, at their tired faces and wounded bodies. She thought about all the friends she had lost in the past 9 days. "No," she finally admitted. "We do not." The war ended 3 hours later when the Vexthery Dominion broadcast their unconditional surrender to the entire galaxy. The Queen was dead. The hive was destroyed. The enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was finally defeated. The humans had won. But as the celebrations began across 1,000 worlds, some people were asking a different question. They had seen what humans could do when they went to war. They had seen the destruction, the determination, the absolute refusal to stop until victory was achieved. The question was simple but terrifying. What happens if they ever turn that power against us? The celebrations lasted for weeks. On 1,000 worlds, billions of beings rejoiced that the war was finally over. The Vexthery Dominion had been defeated. The galaxy was safe. And the heroes of the hour were the strange, small creatures from a planet called Earth. Statues were built in honor of human soldiers. Songs were written about their bravery. Children on distant worlds played games where they pretended to be the legendary warriors who had saved the galaxy. But in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, the mood was very different. Ambassador Xylox stood before the assembled representatives, his 4 eyes moving slowly across the chamber. He had spent months preparing this report, and he knew that what he was about to say would change everything. "I have studied the humans carefully," he began. "I have watched their soldiers in battle. I have spoken with their commanders and their scientists. I have tried to understand what they are and what they are capable of." The chamber was silent. Every representative was listening. "The humans did not simply defeat the Vexthery," Xylox continued. "They broke them. The Vexthery were a warrior species with a civilization spanning thousands of years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and destroyed countless enemies. Within 1 year, the humans reduced them to ruins. That was the objective," said a representative from the Karathi Empire. We asked them to fight a war, and they won it. Yes, Xylox agreed. And now we must ask ourselves a very difficult question. What happens if they decide to fight a war against us? A murmur ran through the chamber. Some representatives looked confused. Others looked afraid. Xylox continued. The humans are not evil. They are not monsters. Many of them are kind, curious, creative beings who simply want to explore the universe in peace. But they carry something inside them that we do not possess. A capacity for violence that exceeds anything we have encountered in 10,000 years of galactic civilization. They followed rules of engagement during the war, another representative argued. They did not attack civilians. They treated prisoners fairly. They controlled themselves. Yes, they did. This time, Xylox brought up images on the display screen. They showed scenes from the Battle of Vexter Prime, burning cities, mountains of enemy dead, human soldiers walking through the destruction with calm, focused expressions. They did this to a species they barely knew, a species they had no personal hatred for. They fought with absolute determination simply because they were asked to help. He paused to let the images sink in. Now imagine what they would do to a species that genuinely wronged them. A species that killed their families or destroyed their homes. A species they truly hated. Xylox looked around the chamber. I do not think we want to find out. The debate lasted for 3 days. Some representatives argued that the humans should be honored and rewarded for their service. Others argued that they should be contained, watched, perhaps even feared. Everyone agreed that something had to be done. In the end, the council reached a compromise. Admiral Jake Morrison was invited to address the assembly on the 4th day. He walked into the chamber alone, a small figure among giants. He stood before the representatives of 100 worlds and waited patiently for them to explain their decision. High Commander Threnvex spoke first. Admiral Morrison, on behalf of the Galactic Council, we wish to express our deepest gratitude for the service of your soldiers. Without your help, this war would have been lost. You have saved billions of lives. Jake nodded politely. Thank you. In recognition of your contributions, the Council has decided to grant humanity full membership in the galactic community. Your species will have all the rights and privileges that come with that status. Your technology will be shared and improved. Your culture will be celebrated. Your achievements will be remembered for generations. Jake waited. He could sense that there was more coming. Threnvex continued. However, the Council has also decided that humans will never again be permitted to participate in galactic warfare. The chamber fell silent. Jake stood very still, his expression unreadable. We do not make this decision lightly, Threnvex said. But we have seen what your species can do. We have seen the destruction you can cause when you choose to fight. The Council believes that for the safety of all beings in the galaxy, human military forces must be permanently restricted to your home system. Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then, to the surprise of everyone in the chamber, he smiled. We understand, he said softly. To be honest, we are not sure we trust ourselves either. He looked around at all the alien faces watching him. Some looked relieved. Others looked guilty. A few looked afraid, even now. You think you are protecting yourselves from us, Jake continued. But you are also protecting us from ourselves. We have spent our entire history trying to become better than what we are. Trying to control the darkness inside us. The war showed us how far we still have to go. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. We accept the prohibition. Not because we are afraid of you, but because we know what we are capable of. We saw it on Vexter Prime. We saw it in the eyes of our soldiers when they came home. Some of them will never be the same. He took a deep breath. Maybe it is better if we stay home for a while. Maybe it is better if we find another way to contribute to the galaxy. A way that does not require us to become monsters. Jig Morrison returned to Earth with the survivors of the first expeditionary fleet. They were welcomed home as heroes, celebrated by a planet that barely understood what they had done. Parades were held. Medals were given. Speeches were made. But the veterans rarely spoke about the war. When their children asked what had happened out there among the stars, they changed the subject or spoke in general terms. Only among themselves, in quiet rooms and late nights, did they acknowledge the truth. They had won the war by becoming something ancient and terrible. They had saved the galaxy by unleashing the oldest and darkest part of human nature. And they had done it well. Perhaps too well. Years later, a young Valorian student asked Ambassador Xylox why the humans had accepted the prohibition so easily. He expected a complex political answer, something about diplomacy and strategy. Instead, Xylox was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. "Because they know what they are," he said. "They have spent their entire existence trying to become something better. The war showed them how far they still have to go." He paused. And perhaps, deep down, they were grateful that someone finally told them to stop. On Earth, life continued. Humans built, created, explored, and dreamed. They sent scientists and artists out into the galaxy instead of soldiers. They became known for their creativity, their curiosity, their endless energy. But in every military academy, in every history class, in every corner of the galaxy, the story was told. The story of how a young species saved the universe and scared it so badly that they were never allowed to fight again. The prohibition was not a punishment. It was a kindness. And the humans, alone among all the species of the galaxy, understood exactly why it was necessary.